everybody, Kenny Holston here, along with Jensen Stidham. I'm super excited to say that we've got Chris Hibben joining us, the MVA Photographer of the Year. We are able to snag him for a few minutes to kind of pick his brain and ask him about his approach to photojournalism and how he captured some of the amazing images that propelled his portfolio to the top of the stack. Jensen?
Yeah, well, first of all, congrats, Chris. It's awesome that you get to be the MVA Photographer of the Year. Starting off, why don't you just tell us how you decided on the photos you chose for your portfolio?
Well, first off, I want to thank you guys for doing this incredible contest. I mean, to go up against, not only people in the United States, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, but to go against everybody that submitted throughout the world, different branches. I mean, it's quite the honor and quite the privilege to be the first MVA Photographer of the Year in the world category, I guess. It's pretty cool for me. So what was the question again? Sorry.
So just how did you go about the approach of choosing the photos for your portfolio?
So the approach for the winning portfolio that I put together was, I think what makes a photographer good is to be in as many different situations as you can. If you're shooting outside every day, the same thing every day, it's going to get dull for you. You don't get that adrenaline rush that, makes your mind think more of, okay, well, how can I show this story and how can I make this into a story? So being able to, shoot everything from different places in Africa, different places in the United States, different situations, whether it be on a ramp with a C-130 or, in a combat zone doing deliveries. I think being able to be in multiple different places and getting those different types of shots allows you to be, the better photographer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you definitely have a solid range of photos in your portfolio. I mean, you can tell that you did some traveling. You weren't just, at whatever base station and going out around base. Like, you were definitely literally around the world, which is pretty cool to see in your portfolio.
Exactly. If I could tell anybody that's out there shooting, whether it be, your PA guy that sits at a desk and, goes out to the ramp every once in a while, different places. If there's an air show one day and, maybe refueling the next day, or, some tanks going out on some trail or whatever, you can make your own experience. Don't get how do I say it nicely? Don't get sedimentary into, just your normal line of work. Do something different every day to make your portfolio bigger and better.
Absolutely. I think that's spectacular advice. I know throughout my time as a photojournalist, I've seen folks kind of get pigeonholed into that one thing, maybe try to specialize a little too early. So I really do appreciate what you're saying in terms of taking that wider approach and putting yourself into maybe some situations that aren't always as comfortable, but that might yield imagery that you wouldn't have otherwise captured. I think that's spectacular.
Totally. I mean, you could actually make a gate guard look like, the hero of the year.
Right.
Just go out there and wait for the moment. Don't make the moment, wait for the moment.
It's great advice. So as we move forward here, we would be remiss if we didn't ask, from a photojournalistic perspective, what are your thoughts on the current COVID-19 situation and some of the approaches that you've seen both military photojournalists and civilian photojournalists taking to try and tell this story?
Right now I'm in D.C. I live in Wisconsin. My normal job is I own a production company, and I built a van. So I drove a production van out to D.C., and the production van allows me to do single-person video interviews for all the different networks, like Fox, CNN, whoever hires me, I'll work for them. But the long story short, on the civilian side for me is be safe. After every interview, I'm wiping the chair down, I'm wiping the bench down, I'm wiping the mics down. It's good practice to do those things normally, but now you have to do it after every interview, where, before you were probably a little lackadaisical, you probably didn't wipe down the chair, or, the IFB that goes in somebody's ear, maybe you forgot to change it out. Not saying people do it, but, it's normal sanitary things that we take for granted sometimes that we don't do. Now you really have to watch what you're doing and make sure that the other person feels comfortable. Personally, I feel pretty safe in the van doing interviews. When that person comes into the van, they're a little apprehensive, like, okay, well, I'm going to be, about 8 feet away from this person. Is that person sick? Did they wipe stuff down before I get in? Are they wearing rubber gloves? Different things like that. So one of the things I try to do by cleaning, my interview area is to make sure the person feels comfortable. And, that goes to questioning too. If you don't make a person feel comfortable when you're questioning them, they're a little bit more apprehensive to do the interview. You make them feel comfortable, they go on air, everything's good. Military-wise, combat camera, 4th Combat Camera, we've actually shut down temporarily. None of us are really traveling. None of us are going anywhere. A couple of TVD-wise, I think, are coming up that have been canceled also. So it's an interesting time right now to be able to go out and actually document what's going on, because everybody's in their house, right? So the only thing you could do is possibly, if you wanted to go get photos to document COVID, you've got hospitals, you've got government officials, you've got different things, TV news stations, those critical people. One of the things, you got to think about is those are the people in the forefront. What about the people behind the scenes? The carry-out delivery guy delivering food to doors, the restaurants that are now doing curbside pickup. There's a lot of stories out there to cover, and to be able to go out and, jump in your car, you're maintaining your distance, you're 6 feet or whatever, pop out, get a couple pictures. Maybe somebody's delivering food and he's wearing a mask, or maybe somebody's, got the curbside delivery and they're in a toxic waste suit or something. Those are places you can go tell a story and get pictures, because this is a pandemic. This is something that hasn't happened since 1917 with the flu, and you have the opportunity to go out and document and do something and see things that you don't even want to see in a lifetime.
Yeah, super interesting. Switching gears off COVID just a little bit, back to your MVA portfolio. Not that I don't want to hear more about what you're doing, because I think it's amazing, and it's incredible that you're out doing this and capturing these stories. So I guess my first question is, what's your favorite image in your portfolio, and why?
I would have to say my favorite image would have to be the guys that are sitting at a table when we were in Gabon. It's real dark. It's kind of like the Last Supper type looking shot. Everybody is in a meeting. Everybody's attention is focused. You see some faces, you see some silhouettes, you see some, people with their heads turned. Other guys just kind of just sitting there. You could look at each person, and almost each person is telling their own story. And to be able to frame that photo with the lighting that was behind them like that, and be able to get an image pulled out that just, it really kind of set the tone of what we were doing. I believe that was like our first day we were there, and it might have been the second day, but everybody's gearing up to do an operation, and it just was really kind of surreal, going like, holy cow, this is the stuff that you read about, this is the stuff that movies are made of, and I'm living that actual movie.
Yeah, for sure. With that image, did you sit there and make several frames? Were you waiting for, different body language or anything, or?
I kind of, it's kind of funny. So those were the Army guys that were just finishing up their meeting right there. And I just gotten out of the shower, and I looked over, I was like, oh, went and grabbed the camera, and I probably took maybe about 10 or 15 frames. I wasn't really like looking at it like, oh, this is going to be like the really cool photo. But after the first one that I shot, I was like, oh, this is interesting, and I started out wide, because they were in a Quonset hut. And then I slowly pushed in on it, grabbing different angles, grabbing different, profiles every view. And that was the one that kind of stuck out to me where, you had the door like this and then, the black basically kind of mimicking the door. And just the light that kind of diffused out from underneath the table and over the top of them onto the ground in front of them just kind of really stood out to me.
That's awesome. I'm glad I'm glad we're talking about that image. It's one of my favorite out of your portfolio as well. I think this is a good segue. Being as that it's like a low light image. There's things you have to do. So some folks might be curious about your gear. Speaking specifically about photojournalism, what do you use? What's your setup to capture still images?
Sure. Well, my issued camera is a Nikon D5. I couldn't really tell you what I shot that with. My guess is a 70 to 200 lens. I usually always shoot, unless I need a lot of depth of field, I usually always shoot like a 2.8 to 4. Try to keep it at that aperture. But you let the light into the camera. Let it in there. Let it in the right way. Always watch your settings. I think ISO nowadays compared to when we all first started is like, wow, I'm shooting in almost pitch black, and now these cameras are doing such amazing things. Nikon's got a great platform. They teach it at the schoolhouse. We use it out in the field. Mine's got a broken LCD. My filter ring has been broken so many times I couldn't tell you. I actually have a filter ring on there right now without glass because I can't get it off. But the thing is, it's just a really good camera that you can just beat up, and it just keeps on ticking no matter what. Other gear that I use, of course, most of it's Nikon. I do have the Sony A7S II, which I find a lot of very good low light if you have 100% loom outside. We were shooting in Parker, Arizona with some PJs, and I was amazed I can get my shutter speed down to 15 frames a second, pump my ISO as pretty much as high as I wanted to, and the amount of light that the camera let in, there was very, very little grain. Very little grain. So it's a really neat. I shoot stills with the Nikon. I shoot video with the Sony, so that's kind of one or the other. I don't really shoot stills with the Sony that much, but it is a very nice camera to use also.
Awesome, that's really neat. What do you got, Jensen?
So another thing we were curious about is, so like once you capture the image, what are you doing to it? Are you throwing it into Lightroom, Photoshop? What's your toning process?
So I don't use Lightroom. I go directly from Bridge into ACR, Adobe Camera Raw. Most of the time when I'm doing photos, I'm trying to get them out as soon as possible. One of my favorite things to say is, we're first to fight, first to grab, and first to get them out onto the internet. That's usually what we try to aspire for. So most of the stuff is basic color correction. Brightness, contrast, color balance. I'll shoot a lot of things, so I play around with the color balance quite a bit inside the camera. So, like, when it's sunset out, I won't shoot 5600. I'll shoot at 7000 or 7500. I just bump it up, and it automatically gives me that really cool orangey look. So there's actual sunset. When you see a lot of blues in the shadows, you can actually pull those blues to be a little bit warmer, and then the true color of the sky comes out instead of getting that weird bluish purple that a lot of people see. But what I'll do is I'll first take it in, I'll color balance it, just the brightness, just the contrast to go through. Most of the time, you bring the highlights down a little bit, up your whites a little bit. I try to not crush my blacks. I think that's one of the biggest things people do too much is they try to go, oh, the black has to be really rich black. The problem I see is a lot of times when people crush the blacks, you miss out on so much information details in uniforms, details in like dust that might be around and stuff like that. Because once you crush it, it's gone, right?
That's it.
So when you can lessen that black and use it, lessen that contrast a little bit. And I'll take one of the photos as an example. The one with the PJs are around the civilian and the Ospreys coming in. Now in the camera, you couldn't see all that dust, but if I took the contrast and I took the contrast out of it a little bit and not crush the blacks as much, you could see so much dust that actually was there. Wow. I just try to not over Photoshop or over color correct, and I just try to make the image look like I saw it when I first shot it.
Absolutely. Well, and since we're on post-production and that bit, I think this is a good pathway to captions. Can you talk about how important captions are to you or not, and what your method is when you get back, you download, you're going through your process. You spoke about getting imagery out quickly. How do you effectively get your imagery out quickly but still have the enough information in terms of caption for your audience to know what's going on?
I have one caption that works for everything. No, don't we wish, right?
Right.
Captioning is right. Captioning is important, and I'll go right to Stacy Pearsall's comment when I was watching her video the other day. She said, "This image would have won if it had a caption." It's true. She looked at the image, she saw the image, she wondered what it was, went to look at the caption, and there was nothing in there. So I think it was the Washington Memorial shot with some guys, police officers or something like that, with candles. And I'm like, what are they doing? Were they holding a prayer vigil? Was that Easter night where they do the candle thing? You don't know. And if you don't know what that situation is, if somebody's looking for an image, they're never going to be able to use that image. They can just say, yeah, these firefighters were having a birthday party instead. You don't, or whoever it was. But captioning, as long as you get your 5 W's, right? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Or who, what, where, when, and why. And as long as you get your 5 W's in, and everything's spelled right, and who shot the photo, where you are in the, in the metadata and stuff like that, and you don't put that it was an Osprey or VS-22 or an Army soldier or a C-130. When they do that search, your image is never going to get found. It's just plain and simple, because your caption doesn't get searched when people do a search. It's the metadata.
Right.
Metadata gets your image. Your caption tells you what that image is about, and that's important stuff. It's basic stuff that everybody learns in Dimfos. This is the way you veer in. This is the way you caption. This is the way you do your metadata and your keywords. And if you're not doing that, you're doing a disservice to yourself. Because now you just, say you went into combat, you shot all these great pictures, and if you don't caption them or you don't caption them right, they might as well just sit on a server on your computer instead of even uploading them.
Yeah, for sure. We were talking about for next year, kind of having it broken down like step by step, like before people are submitting photos and stuff. Like, do you have all the metadata in there? Is the caption in there? By everything. That way, when it's submitted, judges don't have any problems with that sort of thing. And
I know everybody's doing copy paste, and they're shifting images that were on their computer or were up on divots, and they're trying to copy the metadata, and they might copy the wrong metadata. I mean, it's a lot of work. We all been there, right? And to get the right stuff in there, it just shows your attention to detail, whether or not you're detailed or not. And we're taught attention to detail in boot camp. You try to hopefully keep some of it when you get out of boot camp. As you get older, you forget. So it's just something that we as photographers should probably take more seriously sometimes.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Well, Kenny, what else were we trying to ask?
So I'd like to transition a little bit and talk about who you've got such an amazing body of work, and I know that none of us get to where, get to certain levels by ourselves and things like that. So who inspires you? Who inspired you? Who currently inspires you? Can you talk about that a little bit in terms of photojournalists specifically? Because I know you do an array of skill sets, but
Sure.
For the sake of this particular conversation, photojournalism.
So when I was a kid, I started off in the high school newspaper with Pentax K1000. I forgot the kind of film it was, 1600 black and white film. You'd be able to develop yourself, and we did, enlargements on the enlarger. I mean, that's the way I learned how to do photography, and you always learn to shoot less, even though now I shoot a lot more because it's digital, but you learn to shoot less because you didn't want to waste the film. You wanted to make sure that, you could only have to go through like 36 images or 54 images or whatever. So I started way back when photography was photography. And I always say this, and before I go into who inspires me, if you can take a 1 gig card and give it to somebody and say, without deleting anything, come back with 12 images that we can upload and have, I think, it would be quite the test to give people, because, figure 1 gig card or a 256 card. That'll get you what? 36 images maybe?
Right, maybe.
So if you could give them that card and make them look at a photo and wait for that moment, I think we'd all appreciate where everybody's come from. Coming from where I've come from, I'll name a couple of names. One of them, some people might know, some people might not. Jim Kepnick, he's an aviation photographer. He's sponsored by Sigma right now. Mm-hmm. And he kind of took me underneath his wing when I was a kid and showed me a lot of things about photography and how to wait for that image and how to get that moment. Make sure you try to get the eye. The eyes tell the story more than the actual surrounding of the story sometimes. I kind of learned a lot of my Photoshop skills and everything from Nick Strokia. I think he's a lieutenant colonel right now. I don't know if you guys know Strokia?
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Yeah, he's quite the technical wizard. He was a photographer in civilian life, and he learned a lot of stuff. And I learned a lot from him and how to create the right color correction. Adding green against magenta, adding blue against yellow, learning how colors work with each other, and then also learning how shadows work, learning that shadows are blue. And if you don't want your shadows that blue, you can pull some of that blue out and go towards yellow. And it's just understanding how a lot of the technical aspects of a photo work to be able to have it look like you saw it in the field. And of course, I guess the last and final two I would have to say would be JT Locke and Stacy Pearsall.
For sure.
You got to have them into the group, only because when I was an aspiring younger photographer, even though JT I think is about the same age as me, he always seemed to have a variety of photos, and I always said, the guy that gets out there and gets into all the different situations, and this goes back to what I said before, if you can push yourself, and if you get on a TDY here, a TDY there, and you're doing all these different areas and you've got different photos, that's what makes a great portfolio. And nothing against the guys that shoot aerial photos all the time. They're great photos. Some of the stuff is just amazing that they do, but get on the ground, get in a tank, get in a personnel carrier, ride the back of a moped, whatever, get those different situations. And I saw that from Stacy and JT. They always had different things. It wasn't the same thing, but 30 different views of the same thing. It was, somebody somewhere else, and somebody in this, and somebody doing that, and, a cooking, whatever. All those different areas makes you have that better portfolio. And it also makes you a better photographer because you learn to shoot in those different areas and come out with a great product.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. absolutely. And yeah, both I'd have to say the same. Both JT and Stacy were have been and are currently inspirations to myself as well. And I know for Jensen, we've talked about it at length, which was a big part of our decision to have them as judges, and stuff like that. We just truly believe in the quality of work that they've produced, not only in the past but even currently. Great, really great.
I was a little worried when I saw JT and Stacy were actually judging. I'm like, oh, geez, this is going to be hard. It's almost like going up against them. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
They actually it's like, okay, well, they're judging me off of their past experiences, so it's almost like judging against their portfolio.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That said, when you go out and you're rocking and rolling, whether it's in your civilian job or in your military role, what kind of pressure do you put on yourself, if any, to succeed? And if it's not pressure that you put on yourself, what kind of pressure is just on you in general, especially being as that you're a senior storyteller? You've been doing this for a while, so it's not like you could go out and then come back and be like, I tried, but I didn't get it, guys. Like, you've got to be clutch every time. What kind of pressure is that?
It's a lot, I got to admit. Even in my civilian job, I have to be 100% all the time. My civilian job, you're only as good as your next gig. So if you screw up, they're not going to hire you tomorrow.
Right.
So that's putting food on the table. So if you really do screw it up, I've had guys that work for me in like ESPN or Fox or somebody will call me and say, hey, everything went great, but just don't bring that guy next time. And that's tough, and then when you try to tell that guy, hey, I appreciate your work, here's your paycheck, but it just wasn't perfect and they want perfect. It's the same thing in the military. Major Harper was my OIC over in HOA, and she has a relatively good perspective on things, and she knows, okay, well, if we need the job done, I know I can send Hibben. He'll get it. He'll get what we need. And it is a lot of pressure. And I screw up just like everybody else. I can show you blurry picture after blurry picture after underexposed picture, especially when, you've got 10 seconds to get a shot, and the first instinct and your ISO's at 100 and it's pitch black out. It doesn't work, right? Oh shoot, I gotta change it, and I'll be the first person to say, I'm not perfect. I'm still aspiring to be that great photographer. I don't think I probably will ever feel like I'm the best, just because there's always room to learn.
Sure.
And I told a couple of the troops at First Combat Camera one time when I was leading them, I said, you need to take the stress off yourself. I get it, you're shooting with me and you're trying to be the best and stuff like that. But if you try to get one great photo from whatever you're shooting, you're going to have that, you're going to finally get that one great photo. Say it's a 3-hour op or something, you're going to get one great photo. But you'll probably have 10 other good photos because you're trying to get that one great photo. And it's that one great photo is what you keep for your portfolio, right?
Absolutely.
But now you've got 10 other photos that tell the story along with that one great photo. So now you've done your job, and you're going to screw up. We all screw up. We all make mistakes. It's, I can guarantee JT still makes mistakes. I'll put money on it. And he'll probably message me after this and go, I don't make any mistakes. But he makes mistakes.
Right.
But, we all make mistakes. Learn from your mistakes, right? Get that ISO set before you even get there. Get that shutter speed set before you get there. You know what you're going to shoot, right? So you go out, you're going to be shooting, say, a firing range. Okay, well, it's broad daylight. There's no clouds in the sky. What are your settings? If you're going to be at a 2.8, what's your ISO? Of course, your ISO is going to be crushed, right? What's your shutter speed at? Well, I want to show a little motion. Maybe get the bullet come out. Okay, so maybe you want to hit that 125. Oh, I need a filter. Maybe you want to shoot it at a 60th of a second. Maybe I need an ND 1.8, on the front. So know your numbers really well.
Yeah.
So that way when you go out, you know how to shoot where you're going. Like I get off a C-130 sometimes, and it's pitch black the first stop, and the next stop the sun's starting to come up. Okay, well, I know that it's starting to get light out. Okay, I don't want to be shooting at a 1 second. Maybe I'll shoot at like a 30th of a second or a 60th of a second. Get my ISO to where I need it. If you can pre-think your shoot or your shot or your situation, go in there with your settings close to where they're supposed to be. That'll allow you to change them within a couple clicks, and now you're just documenting.
Absolutely.
Nice. All right. Well, for the sake of time and the viewers watching this, and my computer's about to die, and I need to save this video. I don't know. Do you have anything else to add? Kenny, do you have any last-minute questions?
No, Chris, I would just really like to thank you for coming and talking with us today. We hope to do this again with you at some point this year. We definitely don't want this to be a one-time thing. We're also inviting Michelle Saray, last year's winner, back to chat and stuff like this. We just think that it's, one, it's compelling just to hear your approach and everything like that. And not only that, but for all the junior military shooters, the up-and-comers and things like that, we've gotten feedback that they've found stuff like this extremely valuable, which is always the goal. Not only that, but there's just the idea of just really like gritty competition to see where people stack up. I've always been a big fan of it, so is Jensen, and that's why we put forth the effort with MVA. So thank you so much, and congratulations again.
Yeah,
I appreciate
keep a lookout
you guys.
Keep a lookout in the mail for that MVA trophy. We're gonna need a nice selfie with you in it, so we'll post that up to Facebook as well. But yeah, seriously, congrats, Chris, and thanks for all the work you're doing out there in DC. And stay healthy, stay safe, and keep wiping down all your equipment.
A lot of sanitizer, man. A lot of sanitizer.
Nice. All right. Well, we'll see you later, Chris.
Thanks. Take care, guys.